Hi, I'm Caroline Webb. I'm CEO of Sevenshift, and I'm here with the marvelous Peter Bregman, CEO of Bregman Partners. And we're going to have a conversation about something that both of us have been working on for at least a couple of decades, not to give away our ages or anything. We're both really focused on leadership and how to help people be better leaders. And we've come at it through different ways in our career, and we thought it would be interesting to talk about the kind of work that we're doing with people, the trends that we're seeing, what is it that leaders need in today's environment and perhaps in tomorrow's environment too. So Peter, it's great to be here.
Great to be here with you. This is fun.
Yeah. So tell me, what has brought you to where you are now in terms of the work that you're doing on leaders and with leaders?
It just occurred to me when you asked me that question, believe it or not, that I started my career teaching leadership in expeditions, mountaineering, kayaking, wilderness, 30-day expeditions. Yeah. And so leadership to me has never been conceptual, right? It's never been theoretical. It's been, very, very practical. It's about, you're with a bunch of people in the woods and you got to get from point A to point B, and you have to get them there safely. And how do you get there? And what are the challenges that you face? And how do you come up with those challenges? And the leadership lessons that I taught or that I learned came out of the practical experiences that we had.
Yeah.
I honestly never really thought about it this way until you just asked that question. But when I think about my focus in leadership now is all about practical application.
Right.
I'm not interested in leadership theory. I'm interested in how we close the gap between theory and action. I'm interested in how we show up as leaders. And I think there's actually a very clear link from 25 years ago when I was 3 years old doing this, and now I'm kind of doing the same stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting.
How about
threads
you?
of our lives. Well, I got interested in I had a first career in public service, and I noticed that people would be promoted into a managerial role because they were the best at the technical job that we were doing. I was an economist.
It's very, very unfortunately named the Peter Principle.
So they would become a manager without any guidance on how to shift their focus from the technical thing they were amazing at doing to actually helping other people be at their best. And so, as you might imagine, they were generally not great at it.
Right.
I mean, how could they be? Why should they be?
Right.
And so I became very interested in those who sort of somehow managed through, maybe through sort of personality or through luck, or perhaps they'd done some reading. They were just a little bit better at it.
Right.
And it was just fascinating to me to see the difference in how the teams felt around them.
Right.
And I was also working with a really senior group of people, the Monetary Policy Committee, that was the group that was setting interest rates in the UK. Right. And I saw how you had this collection of really smart people. I mean, the smartest possible people who were really sniping at each other. And there were factions in the group, and that this was becoming a little bit of not a scandal exactly. That's perhaps not as dramatic enough to be a scandal, but it certainly it was making the news.
Right.
I thought, this is fascinating. Having been previously focused quite firmly on the technicalities of economics, I became much more interested in what is it that makes someone perform at their best, and what is it that helps them help other people perform at their best. And so it was always in that context of knowing that you can be smart in one way, but there's a different type of smart that you need if you're going to be a great leader. Right. So I then went to McKinsey and focused on organisational change and leadership, and was there for 12 years, and was very focused on this question of what is it that unlocks that side of yourself that is the more human side, that understands what it takes to motivate and engage someone else. Right. But I did have my very first experience in the whole field was actually also involved in outdoor stuff. I remember when I was when I was 16.
It was an outward-bound course, was it?
I was doing some volunteer work with it was a sort of community volunteer thing, and we had to learn how to abseil and climb and kayak. Right. And then work with young kids, and sometimes older kids, and sometimes young adults, to help them overcome their fears and become the human beings that they were going to be. So then we work with ex-convicts and young offenders and that sort of thing. And and that amazing experience of leaning back at the top of the cliff and confronting. Right. So I totally get what
right.
Yeah.
You know, you used a word twice that I think is a really important word and really interesting in the conversation around leadership. You've said human being, yeah. right? Like that, you know, like the sort of human aspect of being human being.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting. I mean, I was mentioning to you that I really love the title of your book, and that it's that in a leadership world, in a world of leadership where, you know, people try very hard to be very sophisticated in how they approach things, you know, your book, How to Have a Good Day, is, you know, is very down to earth, and it's very pedestrian almost in terms of like the way.
Why, thank you.
Like the, you know, the way you describe it, and it's very, very true, and it's very, very human. And I wonder, you know, how, and it's always, that's always been a big focus of mine, you know, when I, again, early on, I mean, I think my career has been opportunistic more than strategic. I've just sort of pursued the things that are interesting to me. But when I look back, there are very, very clear links, you know, the one that I just mentioned before, and also, you know, this commitment. In journals I wrote when I was very young, I mean young in my career. Journals I wrote that the focus of my work was to kind of bring humanness into the workplace, like
right.
Not even humanity, that's the wrong word, but humanness.
Yeah.
You know, who we are as people. We're people.
Yeah.
We're people in a setting, setting that people, you know, sometimes wear suits and, you know, and try to be polite with each other, but we're people. And how to invest that. And I'm curious what you found, because now you're working with and talking about, you know, how to have a good day, right?
Well,
which is very, very human.
I mean, in a way, I always thought, you know, my practice at McKinsey was called leadership development, leadership coaching, you know, whether I was working with top teams or individuals or designing leadership training programs. And I always felt that in some ways it was a bit of a fraudulent term, because I just thought, when I'm doing behavioral change work, I'm helping people be at their best. Is that leadership? Well, I'm working with senior people, so we call it leadership.
Right.
But sometimes colleagues of mine would say, so what's your definitive theory of leadership? You know, what are the 4 things that, you know, that every leader must do, or what are the 7 things, or what are the 10 things? And I really struggled with it. I didn't have a theory.
100%.
Right. I didn't have a theory of leadership. I felt that we knew quite a bit from behavioral science about how people could be at their best, and again, what it takes to help other people to be at their best. But beyond that, I just saw so much difference in what allowed someone to really flourish in how they were inspiring and moving the whole body of people. And you're also very a-theoretical and kind of focused on the practical.
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone were to ask me that same question, I was thinking how I would answer it. You know, what are the top 10 things you need as a leader? My answer would be where.
Yeah.
Like where? Yeah. Like, you know, like at McKinsey or at Capital One or at, you know, at Gulfstream manufacturing airplanes. Like where? Yeah. Because every culture is different, and not only those big examples, but Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan, Chase, you know, Goldman Sachs, every single one. I worked in all of them, and every single one of them has a very different culture.
Right, and to get things done.
It's very, very different, right? Exactly. You're going to get stuff done at Morgan Stanley, and you're going to get stuff done at Goldman Sachs. It's completely different. The politics are different. The words we use are different. The way we work together are different.
So what's the common thing that underlies the work that you do, given that, you know, it is so different how you help someone be a great leader in different organizations?
You know, that's a great question, and I think that there's an underlying thing. I'll get to the underlying thing in my view in a second.
Yeah.
But I think even before the underlying thing, there's a curiosity, right? A willingness to be curious, to go into a situation, and even as an expert, even knowing a lot, right? Because I'll actually juxtapose it. I think most of the answers to questions involve the word "and," right? So it's like confidence and curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Too much confidence, and I'm not curious anymore because I know all the answers because I'm not smart. Mm-hmm. But only curiosity without confidence, then you can't ever take action because you're just always wondering.
Yeah.
Right? So this combination, this willingness to be confident, to act, to move forward, and to be curious and to be wrong. There's an article I haven't written yet, but it's like on my mind to write, titled "How to Be Wrong." Like, people don't know how to be wrong, and it's really useful to know how to be wrong. It's leadership. It's powerful leadership to know how to be wrong.
Yeah.
To be able to say,
yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah.
I was wrong in that.
Yeah.
And let's pivot.
And to have the courage to take a step even though you can't possibly know for sure whether it's the right step to take.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. When I teach leadership, the very first thing we do, the first 3 minutes of our leadership program, I'm not going to tell you what we do, but we put people in a situation just for 3 minutes where they have to make decisions with no instructions. Because that's the feeling of leadership. Because leadership is ultimately an emotion. It's a feeling. It feels. You feel like you've stepped into ambiguity. If you're following what other people are saying, you're not leading, you're following.
Yeah. The essential condition of leadership is uncertainty.
It's uncertainty. That's the essential condition. And uncertainty is a feeling.
Right.
There's a physical reaction we have to uncertainty.
And we know what's going on in people's brains when they're facing uncertainty. As uncertainty amplifies the effects of anything that's negative. So there's this study that was done in my hometown of London, which had people touching a hot panel, and they didn't know how hot it was going to be. It was uncomfortably hot. Right. And if they were given a bit of information about how hot it was going to be, they were better able to cope with the pain.
Oh, that's interesting.
And if they didn't have any information, then the reaction to the pain was much, much greater. So, and this is something that we're managing for ourselves as leaders, we're managing for other people as leaders.
Right.
And what is it that we can do to help our relationship with uncertainty be more positive and more productive?
Right. And I think it's, like any muscle, I think it's like, what is our tolerance for uncertainty? Right. People have different tolerances for uncertainty. Yeah. But it's that, that underlying thing to me is what I'm working on for my next book, called what I call emotional courage, the willingness to feel things.
I love that phrase. I saw that on your website, emotional courage. And I wrote it down.
It's like we talk so much about the courage to act.
Yeah.
But this is the courage to feel. Right. Like, am I willing to feel uncertainty? Am I willing to feel shame? Am I willing to feel, your rejection? Yeah. If I'm willing to feel all that, then I can step powerfully into uncertainty and move towards the things that are important to me.
I'm working with a leader at the moment who has very, very high standards and wants his people to take enormous risks and wants them to move really, really fast. Right. And one of the things that's obviously, as you might imagine, coming out of that is you've got to be willing to make mistakes. You've got to be okay with failure. Right. So yes, have high standards, but apply those high standards not just to the outcome, but what you're able to learn.
Right.
Because there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't quite work out.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. It's a beautiful way of putting it, to have high standards to what you're going to learn, which means high standards for failing well.
Yes, failing well, exactly. Like fail fast is a phrase that's used a lot, but failing well is absolutely.
Fail judiciously.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was working with coaching a senior person in an organization who was very focused on accountability. And we were very clear about that. I was coaching him around holding people accountable, and there was no changes happening in the organization the way he wanted them to be, and we couldn't understand why. And we were looking at it, and he kept saying something that finally it clicked with me. And he kept saying, I want people coming up with new ideas. I want them thinking about new ways of doing things. And something hit me, and I said, we're focused on helping you get people to be accountable. But the way you're making people accountable is actually giving you the reverse of what you want. What you want from them is creativity.
Right.
And accountability and creativity are two different things. I mean, yes, you can hold people accountable, but you have to find the and in there, right? And that in fact, some of the things you're doing to hold people accountable are the opposite of what you should be doing if you're trying to draw out their creativity. And how do you find that and?
Yeah. And I find myself talking more and more about, there's a lot of discussion of the future of work and what automation is going to mean for workplaces. And I find myself talking quite a bit about the fact that leaders of the future, I mean, arguably leaders now, right, but especially leaders of the future.
Of the future, like tomorrow.
Yeah, like tomorrow.
Right. It's still a future.
Yeah, exactly. We'll need to excel at the things that machines can't do.
Right.
I mean, already true,
right.
but even more so, there'll be a real premium on people who are able to bring out creativity,
right.
to your point, wisdom, empathy in
right.
the working environment.
Right.
Because if you think about what can't be automated, there's some interesting work done by McKinsey which said that, which looked really systematically in a way that McKinsey does, at every possible job,
right.
what could be automated given current technology.
Right.
And they found that very few jobs actually get automated completely away, but obviously huge chunks of what everybody can do can actually be automated.
Right.
And the things that are least automatable are exactly what we're talking about, which
right.
is creativity, empathy, wisdom, decision making, where that it isn't black and white because it's totally uncertain. You
right.
can't possibly know, so you have to develop some kind of wisdom in how you go into that uncertainty and how you come through it and come out of it.
Right.
So I find myself talking a lot now about the fact that if you want to encourage that in people, you need to know a bit more behavioural science than is typical. There was a
right.
time when leaders would learn strategy, and strategy would be the thing,
right.
That would differentiate. If you think strategically, that would make you an amazing leader
right.
in
right.
the minds of a lot of people. So I do feel that the next few decades, more and more people who are striving to be great leaders will need to understand how the human mind works.
Right. I think that's true. And I think, we still look for leaders to be strategic.
Yeah.
Right?
It's yes. I mean, we banked it. That's the
right.
thing. We just,
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Yes, of course you need to be able to think about a vision and think about the future
right.
and consider how to
But that fail fast
that.
thing that you were talking about, I think is very, very true because
yeah.
the world is changing so fast, right? I mean, trite to say, but it's true.
Yeah.
That, I could have a great strategy that 3 minutes from now is not a very good strategy anymore, right? And
yeah.
and so it's like, it almost feels like a key competence to powerful leadership is the willingness to fail over and over and over and over again, and
yeah.
and the talk about the title of your book, How to Have a Good Day, how to not have that ruin your day.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Like how to fail
yeah.
and
yeah.
then just keep going and
yeah.
go like, ooh, I got that one wrong, let's move on. It's not
yeah.
a big deal, but we have to move on.
Yeah.
Now if I'm failing and failing and failing, I'm not learning anything.
Yeah.
Then it's why in 18 minutes I sort of divide up in 5 minutes in the morning, a minute each hour, and 5 minutes in the evening. And this idea that when you finish work, you've got to spend at least 5 minutes. I know so few people who do this, and it's the
highest.
Reflection. Yeah, it's the highest leverage 5 minutes that could possibly happen in your day.
Yeah.
To take 5 minutes and to just sit back and go, what did I learn today?
Yeah.
Like what happened that I want to do differently? What do I want to do the same of? 5 minutes, 1 minute. Like people don't take 1 minute. I often don't take my 1 minute or 5 minutes to sit at the end of the day and say, what came out of today that I want to learn from.
I think it helps to develop a ritual around it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone says this is true, that it's easier to remember to build a new habit if you have some hooks that allow you to kind of place it in a specific part of your day. And so for me, it's definitely sitting with my husband at the end of the day and saying, okay, let's review, and we do it every day
together.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, and that really helps actually.
I'm going to do that. That's going to be my new ritual with my wife. No, because I think it's great. I think that's great. I think to do it with someone else makes a big difference.
And we have to look for the good things as well. Sometimes it's not such a great day, and it's really important to look for the good things because they can get totally competed out.
Right.
And then you've got the peak end effect, which means that as you remember the day, you remember the most intense moment, and you remember the end.
Right.
Which means that having a review of the end
that's interesting.
Talks about the successes of the day brings up your average.
That's great.
And then the day remains in your memory banks as something more positive.
I love that. Yeah. And that's the behavioral science piece to it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that's how we hack our days.
I love it because what I often do is we'll talk about it's the only time my wife and I sometimes it's like the only time we have together at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we'll say, what are we going to do about this problem? What are we going to do with that problem? We're going to, we try to solve all these problems.
Right.
And the peak, the sort of peak end effect, right?
Yes.
Is in the end, that's what we're left with.
Yes.
It's like we're just
you go to bed and you
we go to bed. We're thinking about all the problems we
have.
have. It's beautiful.
And that's something which I do talk about with my leadership coaching clients is how do you think about bringing that into everything you do, every interaction?
Right.
How do you end each meeting with, okay, what do we really, what went really well, what are we going to do again?
Right.
What are we taking forward from this? What do we like from this?
Right.
And if you do that in the microscopic parts of the day, it starts to add up to a really different sense of morale and sense of forward momentum. But this point about reflection and that 5 minutes among your 18, that being the absolute, the pivot point of whether you're really making the most of the day. All the science says that too.
Right. Oh, that's great. It's great, and then you really learn. Yeah. So we should think about this for this conversation, the high point of the conversation. Like ending on this peak. But I know for me, it's a complete delight. Every interaction I've ever had with you is a complete delight. But it's a complete delight, and it's such a reminder. I mean, I love leaving a conversation thinking, okay, I'm going to do something differently out of this conversation. Like, this conversation was great for me. I hope it was for people watching. And I know for me, like, I'm going to take out of this, 5 minutes at the end of the day, not the end of the workday, with Eleanor, with my wife, to like talk about what we learned, and also really what were the high points, so that I go to bed with those high points.
Yeah, and I'm going to think more about uncertainty and how we go into and cope with uncertainty. I think, it was in the back of my mind as a sort of, as a theme, but actually having this conversation has brought it out to really help me understand that this is, as I said, the central condition of leadership, and actually how we manage that. I think I'm going to do a bit more reading on the science around how the brain copes with uncertainty to figure out what more might we do to help leaders manage that.
Oh, that's great. We'll continue that conversation then. That'd be fun.
So thank you. This is great. And the courage point, emotional courage. You've given me emotional courage to do that.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter.
It's such a pleasure.